Stan Gibilisco here with another little explanation of some material of interest in this book, Making Everyday Electronics Work. Just came out in August of 2013, published by McGraw-Hill, written by yours truly. In the previous video in this playlist, Tanglewire Garden, I discussed the haywire kludge Rube Goldberg apparatus underneath my ham radio workbench. By the way, the noise that you hear in the background is my ham radio station. It is listening to what's called phase shift keying. A bunch of radio hams getting on there and sending text in a very interesting mode known as phase shift keying. This book, by the way, has a chapter that discusses a little bit about ham radio and actually has a photograph of my nerd cave where I do my ham radio and make these videos and do a lot of other stuff while other people my age are probably down in Deadwood getting into some kind of trouble or another. I know a few. Let me stop there. Making Everyday Electronics Work is the name of this book, and you can get it. Go to my website, sciencewriter.net. Go to Amazon, books available at Amazon link, and find this book, and there you've got it. Anyway, I talked about in that previous video, Tanglewire Garden, about the third prong in your electrical outlet and to find out whether it's properly grounded or not. Because if it's not, and oftentimes they aren't, then your transient suppressor also sometimes in an improperly called surge suppressor or surge protector, this thing won't work right because it needs a good electrical ground in order to work. And unfortunately, a lot of homes which had two-wire electrical systems without solid electrical grounds, they installed these third prong plugs, these three-wire plugs, and they just left the third prong, this one down here. This thing down in the bottom, the little third prong, is shaped kind of like a D, turn on its side. These things were just left either with a short wire running nowhere or nothing connected to them at all. And I lived in a house like that. And I did this test and I found out that it wasn't grounded. So just after the discussion of Tanglewire Gardens, on page 84 of this book, actually it starts on page 83 and goes in page 84, talks about whether the system is grounded or not. If it's not, your transient suppressor will not work. And no, as a matter of fact, I thought that was wrong. It's starting on page 86, grounded or not. You can find out whether this system of yours is properly grounded. And if it's not, you've got to take measures to make sure that it is. You probably want to hire an electrician if you're not comfortable wiring it yourself. It can be dangerous. Sometimes, I remember that house I lived in, I talked about, it just had a wire going nowhere from one of these prongs, and it picked up a voltage on that wire. Nevertheless, even though there was nothing connected to it, there was an induced voltage on it, and I got a nasty shock until I grounded it to a cold water pipe myself. But you got to take care. There's a rule here in that we have, by the way. Never touch two grounds at once. You think two different points are both grounded, so they must have no voltage between them? Well, you can test it with a multimeter and find out. But don't test it with your body and find out, because you might not live to tell the story. Never touch two grounds at once. So what you do is, the test is described here. The first thing you do is you check to see whether that third prong in the outlet that you want to have to test, to use your transient suppressor in or whatever, you check to see whether that has a voltage with respect to the third prong in an outlet that has a known electrical grounded third prong. Or you can go to one of the cold water pipes in your house if they're the old metal kind, or to the actual central ground of your electrical system. You can find that ground rod wherever it is. It should be where the utility wiring comes into your house. Check to be sure that this has no voltage here first. If it doesn't, if it does have a voltage, you know it's not grounded and you got to do something about it. If it does have a voltage does not have a voltage with respect to a known electrical ground, then you switch the multimeter over and test to see what the resistance is between this point and the known electrical ground. That resistance, as measured with an ohm meter, should be 0 or near 0. It might be 1 or 2 ohms, but it shouldn't be any more than 1 or 2 ohms. If there's no voltage and the resistance equals 0 as you measure it with this multimeter or voltommilliammeter, your test equipment, then you know that that prong is in fact grounded and your transient suppressor will work. If it's not grounded, don't try to use a transient suppressor with it and hope for the best, because the next time you have a thunderstorm, you may wish that you had done something beforehand, not afterwards. So that is how you can test it. The test is described in exhaustive detail in this book on pages 86 through 88. Grounded or not? That is the subtitle. Grounded or not. Believe it or not, grounded or not, you want to make sure that it's not grounded. That is to say, it's got a good solid basis for which your transient suppressor, not surge suppressor, transient suppressors can function. And I recommend that you use transient suppressors with any sensitive electronic equipment. So with that, I will say so long. You can find more about this book and other books I've written on my website, sciencewriter.net.